Welcome to the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District 2022 Financial Statement Audit Presentation. My name is Justin Nelson. I'm a Senior Manager with Abdo, and I'll be going through the presentation. I'd first like to say a quick thank you to Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District staff for all their help in preparing the audit. I'd also like to thank the contracted accountant at Redpath for her help as well. And lastly, I'd just like to thank the Board of Managers for having us as your audit firm. We do appreciate it. So to get things started, we will go over the audit results for the district for 2022. So as part of our audit, we are required to issue an opinion on the financial statements and related internal controls that surround those financial statements. So in 2022, we did issue an unmodified clean opinion, which is the opinion that the district is looking for. How did we arrive at our opinion? We tested a number of transactions around paying of bills, paying of employees, looking at grant transactions, looking at the tax revenue, looking at what the Board of Managers gets to make decisions, etc. So we do have a finding that we will go over, two findings that we'll go over on the next slide. We also are required to test Minnesota legal compliance and state statutes as part of our audit. So the Office of the State Auditor does put guides on their website that we are required to test as part of our audit. However, not limited to those, we do test a number of other areas related to state statutes as well. So we did not have any Minnesota legal compliance findings noted for 2022. So overall, a really positive result with the clean unmodified opinion and no legal compliance findings. So this slide does show the two findings that we do have for our audit in 2022. So I will go through them. The first one, as titled, is authorized bank signatories, which is an internal control related finding. So as part of our audit, we do send audit confirmations to the banks that the district is associated with. So one of the confirms did come back noting that there was a prior prior manager listed on one of the accounts. So, as an internal control, obviously it's best practice when employees and managers leave to ensure that everything is taken care of with the bank and the signature cards. Again, the risk does exist for someone to operate, on the district's behalf on part of those accounts. So again, I do believe that this issue is in the works and will be corrected in future years, but something that we are required to report as a finding for 2022. The second finding that we are reporting is a material audit adjustment, which is an internal control related finding. So the internal control related finding for a material audit adjustment in 2022 really did relate to both expenditures and revenues. So the first was that an accounts payable item or an expenditure that was paid for in 2023 was recorded as an expenditure in 2022 incorrectly. This was due to one of the grant related activities. And again, the expenditures were brought back into 2022 incorrectly in tune of about $500,000. So an adjustment was needed to remove that. The second thing that we did adjust as part of our audit was removing loan proceeds recognized, as another financing source in the 2022 audit incorrectly, noting that debt, long-term debt, and those loans only is recorded or recognized as issued. So our accrual for those items was not correct. So we did make a couple different adjustments, one removing some expenditures and one removing some revenues in 2022. So I think, as a recommendation to continue to review those, have processes surrounding the accruals or reviews, things of that nature, as it relates to some of the bigger adjustments that do take place at year end. All right, we'll move on a little bit to the financial results. This slide 4 does go over the general fund balance as it compares to the future year's budget. So on the screen, we do show the general fund balance offset a year to the 2023 budget, kind of comparing that percentage at the end of the year to that future budget to note what those reserve levels are. So over the past couple of years, things have been a little up and down. Again, the reserves back in 2018 were close to 55%. They have been dipping a little bit in 2020, down to 7% in 2020. I know the Watershed District did make a transfer to kind of replenish the general fund in 2021. And again, the general fund balance is down back to 2.4%. So something to keep in mind for future years. Obviously, that percentage is low. To note, if that continues to go down, that the general fund would be borrowing from other funds or would need a transfer from other funds, or allocating differently expenditures from the general fund to other funds to ensure that there is enough revenues to offset those expenditures in the current and future years. All right, so the next slide does focus just on 2022, looking at the general fund budget to actual. So we do show on the screen that the general fund did actually have a budget to decrease its fund balance of about close to $200,000. So the actual results were pretty consistent to the budget, knowing that the overall net change in the fund balance was a decrease of about 215,000. So again, this kind of equates back to the last slide, knowing that that 2.4% is about 11,000 of that ending fund balance in 2022. So how we arrived at that, again, noting that there was almost no change. The budget was very consistent in overall revenues, no significant variations. In expenditures, some of the biggest variations were in engineering and accounting, which had a negative budget variance combined of about $55,000 there. And again, we note offset a little bit by some of the rental and debt service expenditures with a positive variance close to 20,000. So overall, again, things came in pretty close to budget. Just something, again, as mentioned on the previous slide, to note and to review those revenues and expenditures, as well as other financing sources and uses in the future years to ensure that there is a balance to move forward in the general fund. So the last slide we'll go over is, again, the main activity of the watershed district and the program and project implementation fund. So we will go over the budget to actual statement, and again on the screen we do see the budgeted amounts as well as the actual and the variance with budget. So the fund did have a final budget to increase reserves about 82,000, and actual results did come in with the fund decreasing about 75,000. So if we start with the revenues, knowing that the revenues were slightly under budget by about $45,000, mainly due to permit fees, which were under budget by close to 60,000. So if we move to the expenditures were under budget, close to 700,000. The main reason for that would be the project costs, almost a little over $1 million as well. A little bit further down into that, looking at the individual lake projects and the project costs under budget by close to 350,000. So again, overall things did go under budget there. And looking at offsetting that, there was a budget for the district to have a loan issued to cover some of those costs, about 1.6 million. And again, offsetting some of those under budget in the project costs. The loan had a positive variance of about 800,000 related to the loans issued, and did issue the loan total of about 760,000 in 2022. So again, overall a pretty good year for the fund, staying fairly consistent. Again, knowing that the project costs and things that do happen are dependent on a number of different factors. And again, overall a pretty good year. With that, I've reached the end of the audit presentation. I appreciate everybody's time sticking with me. On the screen, you will see our audit team. If anybody does have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us individually. We'd be happy to answer your questions. Again, we really appreciate being a part of the Watershed District. Good luck the rest of the year. And again, as we do a remote presentation, if there's anybody that has any questions, please feel free to reach out and let us know. Thank you.